It is 8:30. I'm going to go ahead and call this March 18th meeting of the Economic Development Authority to order. And we will start with the approval of the March 18th agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion from Jared Johnson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Molly Hanson. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Then it passes. All right, we're going to move.
Did we have to,
Go ahead.
did we have to do a roll call vote on agenda?
With one on there, we can isolate the vote. So,
All right, perfect. Thank you.
okay,
I hate to do it, but
Team Stickler Syme is letting us know. He's keeping us out of legal hot water, so we will go ahead and do a roll call vote here. Let me pull up a list so I don't miss anyone. All right, we'll start with you, Rayanne.
Aye.
Laura Kregas,
Aye.
Jared Johnson,
Aye.
Molly Hanson,
Aye.
Andy Bowler,
Aye.
Ken Giroux, and I think that's all we have present, and I'll vote aye as well. Motion passes. All right, we will move on to the approval of the February 18th EDA minutes. Those were in your packet. If there's not any changes, I'm looking for a motion there as well.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Mr. Giroux. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Johnson. We'll do a roll call again. Commissioner Danielowski,
Aye.
Jared Johnson,
Aye.
Laura Kangas,
Aye.
Molly Hanson,
Aye.
Andy Bowler,
Aye.
Ken Giroux, and Tim Dolan votes aye as well. Motion passes. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is discussion about the revolving loan fund policy modifications. I think Dan and Scott Shaky are going to discuss this.
Actually, Kevin's going to fill in for Scott on this one, but we did get a recommendation to update our revolving loan policy. Our current terms are 10 to 20 years, and there was a recommendation by CMDC to go to 25 based on some of the things SBA is doing. And I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit about that, of why the change is being recommended.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chair, good morning. Again, my name's Kevin Weirs. I'm Vice President with Central Minnesota Development Company, and we do business as CMDC. And we've been the county's agent since the revolving loan fund since its inception, probably 3-4 years ago already?
It's been 5 almost.
5 years ago that we've been the agent that's been facilitating and underwriting and making recommendations on the revolving loan fund. And for those of you, I'm going to maybe spend a minute or two just giving a little background of some of the typical finance structure and why we're making this recommendation. The revolving loan fund is a fixed asset revolving loan fund, and that's typically financing real estate, although and the program does allow for equipment. But the vast majority of it is to finance the real estate. And the typical structure when somebody is trying to do financing typically involves a commercial bank as well as SBA financing. And the common program that's used with SBA is the SBA 504 program. And that's a program that CMDC is also an agent of, and we originate and facilitate those. In fact, the loan that you're going to be, that my colleague Scott Shaky is going to be presenting today includes a 504. So it's a very common structure. And with SBA, the structure typically is a 50-40-10 structure where the bank usually provides 50% of the financing. SBA, through the sale of debentures, provides 40%. Then there's this equity injection that's required from the small business owner. Well, that 10% is often and can be financed, and that equity injection can be borrowed under certain conditions. So that's often referred to as gap financing, and that's where the Sherburne County Revolving Loan Fund typically comes into play, is assisting that equity injection requirement. So it's borrowed funds, okay? And so SBA policy, when the program was first originated, there were really 2 terms that the SBA 504 program had. There was a 10-year term and a 20-year term. And the 10-year was often used for equipment. but 20 years was always used typically for real estate. Well, about a year and a half ago, they came out with a 25-year option too, and we're seeing that 25-year option taking over and being the predominant choice for small business owners to do a 25-year term. And one of the conditions that SBA has is that on this gap financing or borrowed funds that we talk about, is that the term of that loan or that gap financing be equivalent to what the term of the SBA 504 loan is, okay? So prior to this new 25-year debenture coming out, the 20-year was the standard, and the program that when it came out originally had a term up to 20 years. And so that met the parameters and guidelines of SBA, okay? Now that the 25-year term is out, we're making that request to increase the term of the revolving loan fund up to that 25 years to comply with SBA guidelines. So that's really all we're trying to accomplish at this. So that's a little bit of background on why we're making that recommendation to increase that from up to a 20 to a 25-year term.
So there is a resolution that was included in your packet, and we're looking for approval on that resolution.
Thanks, Kevin and Dan. Does anybody have any questions?
My only question is when we're looking at these deals, and I know the SBA went to the 25 years, what are we doing to match amortization with the remaining useful life of that asset?
Well, under SBA 504 programs, you take an average, so sometimes it's not uncommon for programs to include real estate and equipment. And as long as the average useful life of that is over 20 years or 25 years on an average, SBA will allow for that. So we, if we have a piece of equipment that is, there's no real estate, generally we would do that on a shorter term. So we try to match up the term, even on, it's not an automatic that the revolving loan fund would be a 25-year. We look at it as the useful life of the assets that's being financed.
That would be my question and concern is if it's out, I know how it's been going where it's just automatically going to the 25-year. The multifamilies are automatically getting pushed to 30, 35, maybe even 40 years on some deals. And I think that's a pressure that we're going to see in the whole financial industry, that when we start to go automatically to the max allowed, financial institutions are going to start getting in trouble with that.
Yeah, it's not an automatic.
That's where my question goes back to, if we do this program, and if we're starting to automatically go to 25 years on everything, but maybe it's for a purchase, they need the cash down, but that asset doesn't have 25 years of remaining economic life to it. Are we still automatically going to the 25 years, or are we reducing that to a 15? I mean, what's the
It's really at the discretion of what the small business owner wants. I mean, we don't always see it 25. There are some situations where they may want to stick at a 20-year amortization. There's nothing that automatically says it's automatically 25 years. So it really is, most real estate, when you look at it and you look at it on appraisal, the effective life and useful life of that remaining asset on real estate is usually exceeds 20 or 25 years. I think the issue might come up certainly with the equipment piece of it, and that in those particular situations, then we look at the overall total amount that's being borrowed and we'll adjust that as necessary. But it's not an automatic that it's going to automatically. It's just up to 25 years.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Commissioner Danielowski.
I kind of have the same concerns when it comes to collateral of equipment. That is a concern that, land is not going to be able to be picked up and moved. Equipment has a tendency to not be there when you expect it to be there. We've had that experience in a community that I was involved in the EDA, that the asset you thought that you had secured in regards to a big crane wasn't there when it was needed to be there. So we basically lost that. So I would be concerned about anything to do with the equipment asset, being very cautious and careful as to how long we put any loan in for that. Land-wise and building-wise, you got a lot more substance of value. that's not gonna go anywhere and not depreciate usually.
Thank you, Commissioner Danielowski. And maybe I might ask a little bit more of an effective question from Kevin. What number of loans do we see that exceed that 20-year TAM that don't involve real estate? I can't think of one that we've ever seen.
I don't think we've done a loan where it was just simply off equipment
Not yet.
at all. Everything is involved in real estate, and if there is an equipment component of it, it's fairly small. And when I say small, probably less than 10 or 20% of the overall total project size.
And basically what this policy amendment would do would give us the flexibility to match what the SBA and the private lender deem is appropriate.
Yes.
Appropriate amortization over the loan. So this isn't a policy that we're looking at in passing that says we're automatically gonna give everybody 25 years every time regardless of the structure. This whole program was designed as a gap financing tool, and kind of puts the onus on the private lenders and CMDC as a servicer and for us to make sure that it matches standard lending guidelines. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and we would bring that recommendation, that would be part of the analysis that's being presented to you, is to discuss that and make some modifications if deemed necessary at that point.
Right,
So-
yeah. We ultimately, as an EDA, ultimately do get to decide and look at the structure of all of these before they go anywhere. So.
Yeah.
It's just an opportunity to match what the guidelines of SBA are, so that the project can include the SBA without making some exceptions or having to go to the government seeking waivers, which can be timely, time consuming and problematic in some situations. So this just allows for the program and the Sherburne County Revolving Loan Fund to comply with what SBA sets up as their requirements for these gap financing loans.
And I think most of us here have worked with the SBA on some level, and we understand that if we don't have the flexibility to match what they're doing, it can throw stuff off in a tilt real quick. So, I mean, I definitely agree with the concerns of Mr. Voller and Rayanne, but that's the reason we review each individual application on its merits. This just gives us the flexibility to match that if it comes to us. Any other conversation, questions?
I just got one quick thing about the concern over equipment.
Yeah.
It'd be very rare, SBA's guidelines don't allow for finance more than 10 years, typically, with some rare exceptions. So it'd be highly unlikely that we would bring an equipment-only loan request to you that would exceed a 10-year period, certainly not 25 years. This would be real estate more specific.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions, comments? All right, I'd be looking for a motion on the resolution presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution.
All right, we have a motion from Laura. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Jared. All right. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll start the roll call vote. Commissioner Danielowski?
Aye.
Aye.
Jared Johnson?
Aye.
Molly Hanson?
Aye.
Andy Voller?
Aye.
And Ken Giroux?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Resolution passes. Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. And that being said, we're going to move on to item number 5, which is First Step Preschool and their revolving loan fund application. Dan and Scott Shakey are going to present on this.
We have received an application for a revolving loan fund, and I'm just gonna give a real quick high overview, and then I'll turn it over to Scott. Rayanne, can you see that okay?
I can.
Okay. Here is the current location of the First Step Preschool. It is located at 413 Proctor. Actually, that's the one we're moving to. It's located at 555 Railroad Drive in Elk River. It was established in 1981, and they have 7 full-time employees and 9 part-timers. And I believe Lisa, the owner, is here, and you took over in 2014, correct? Okay. And they would like to purchase the building at 413 Proctor. It was the former senior center for the city of Elk River. You can see the sale price is about a little over $600,000, and it's currently a tax exempt property. So if it would change over to First Step, it would become a taxable property and generate about $30,000 in property taxes per year. Their expansion plans include the 10,000 square foot building. They would add 4 FTEs, 5 part-timers, and then you see there'd be quite a bit of building renovations as well. And they'd also add some play equipment on the site. So it is a $1.5 million project. You can see how it's being financed with the different entities, and there would be a $50,000 gap. So that's why they're here today, to utilize the revolving loan fund. CMDC has recommended the loan, and I'm going to turn over to Scott to talk a little bit about that. And I just wanted you to be aware that we do have about $330,000 in the revolving loan fund right now, with about $225,000 of committed loans. So there's, add those together, we're a little over $500,000 in the revolving loan fund. And with that, Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I'm just gonna go through a quick overview, and then I'll open it up if anybody has any questions. And we do have Lisa here. If there's something that I can't answer, I'm sure she'd be happy to jump in as well. But Dan did a nice job kind of giving you the overview of the project. This is, and interestingly enough, it just so happens that this one is dependent upon what you just completed, the 25-year increase to the revolving loan fund policy. This one will be set up with a bank loan in a first lien position, SBA and through CMDC's program in a second lien. The SBA loan will be a 25-year loan on the property, 25-year term and amortization. And as Kevin touched on, if there is equity assistance, in this case the EDA's loan request, that's a part of the project. The term of that gap loan can't be shorter than the SBA loan, which was the reason for the consideration that, or the request that you just approved. If it is, it requires that we go to Washington DC and get special waivers on policy exceptions, and that tends to, as you could well expect, that tends to slow the process down significantly. And Lisa is somewhat on a timeline here because her lease expires at the end of August, and she would like to be in the new building starting September 1st, which will require them to get started relatively quickly. First Step Preschool and Childcare is owned 100% by Lisa Egan. The new entity that will own the real estate will be called Egan Properties LLC. It will be equally owned by Lisa and Mike, her husband. The two of them will be personal guarantors on all of the debt, including the Sherburne EDA loan as well. As Dan kind of touched on, First Step's been in Elk River since 1981. It grew into its current location and now has since outgrown that facility. The building there is getting a little tired, needs some improvements, and Lisa has just determined that it really doesn't make sense to put a lot of money into that building when she doesn't own the property. So she has been with First Choice since 2014. Actually, she's been with them since 2003, serving as lead teacher. In 2014, she had the opportunity to buy the business from the owner that was retiring at that point. So she has operated it since 2014, or owned it and operated it. The new facility, as Dan mentioned, is going to be about 10,000 square feet. That's basically about twice the space that she has now. So it would significantly increase the number of classrooms and the space and so forth that she would have, which I'll touch on later here as far as projections and cash flow and so forth. I started working with Lisa, I think probably mid-2019. She, after an exhaustive search of potential expansion properties at Elk River, her search came up dry, and she had decided to pursue building a new facility in Otsego. Then along came COVID, and And that pretty much brought things to a screeching halt for her. She, as many other businesses did, switched from expansion mode to survival mode for most of 2020. Fast forward to early 2021, she was kind of back on solid ground as far as enrollment and numbers and revenues and so forth. And she learned of the availability of what was the old library building and then senior center building here in Elk River. The city was going to be selling it. Immediately went to look at it with her contractor, Mark Mueller, with Heirs and Heirs will be the contractor on this. Appeared to fit her needs. She called me and asked me my thoughts, and we talked numbers. I said, wow, what a great opportunity for you. I mean, this is a perfect building for you. Very well built, as you would expect. It's in good shape, generally in good shape. Just needs some renovations to it to make it suitable for preschool and childcare needs. So CMDC, at that point, CMDC and Tom Munson from Community Development Bank over in St. Michael restarted our financing process. CMDC has approved the SBA loan. Tom's bank will be approving the bank loan, I think probably this week. So basically financing is approved, assuming that EDA comes on board. At this point, we're waiting for the final renovation construction cost. We have budgeted $800,000, which came from Mark at Heirs and Heirs. He think that that's probably maybe even a little high. Hopefully it comes in a little lower, a little less than that, but we've got $800,000 in the budget for improvement costs to the building. First Step's currently licensed to serve 90 kids at any given time. They actually serve kids coming through the door at any point in time. There's probably about 150 kids that come in. Some are part-time, some are just after school, so on and so forth. The new facility, Lisa expects, would increase the licensed number to about 130. And she expects that they would be serving probably upwards of 200 kids in various forms and programs and things like that in the new facility. If you Google First Step, they receive a 5-star rating out of 5 stars, so that says something. Comments on Google are very complimentary towards Lisa and her staff. They were 5 out of 5, so there was nothing derogatory in the reviews. They're very well respected in the community. Current facility doesn't allow her to expand. Basically, she's full and has been full for some time, which has frustrated her because she said she takes several calls a week asking for availability and the ability to put the kids in her program, and has to turn them away just simply because she doesn't have the room to take any more kids in. As I mentioned earlier, the new facility obviously is an expansion, and it will require enrollment to increase, which is addressed in the projections that Lisa has prepared. She doesn't anticipate any issues with that enrollment increase. In fact, I think she's got a waiting list of families and kids now that would like to utilize her program. So with that waiting list and with the continuing, obviously, growth in Elk River and Otsego and the surrounding communities, more and more housing and more young families moving into the neighborhoods, she does not anticipate any concerns at all in achieving those enrollment numbers. Despite the struggles in early 2020, COVID related, Lisa was able to kind of stabilize things and put the wheels back on the car and continue to drive it forward. Revenues actually increased a little bit in 2020, which I think if you ask her back in March and April, that probably wasn't on the agenda to see a revenue increase. Not a lot, but they were actually up a little bit in 2020. She really is capped as far as revenue increases because she doesn't have any room. The only way that she could increase revenues would be to raise prices which she's, I think, prided herself on not doing, you know, maintaining an affordable preschool and childcare program for the community. 2020 operations would have provided adequate cash flow to service the debt as proposed, including the Sherburne County EDA loan. Not abundantly, but it would have been a positive cash flow. Her 2021 projections show 8 months in her current facility while she's building out the new one and getting it ready. And then the last 4 months moving into the new facility with enrollment starting to increase. 2022 would be the first full year of operations in the new facility. And if you look at her projections, which I think were in the more detailed credit summary that I sent over to Dan, 2022 cash flow projections show a debt service coverage ratio of about 2.6 times the proposed debt. So strong cash flow, and assuming she achieves the projections, we'll be in a good position. The Sherburne County loan, as we have it proposed, as is usually the case, would have a third mortgage on the real estate behind Community Development Bank's first mortgage, and then CMDC/SBA's second mortgage through our 504 program. The appraisal is not yet done. I think it's been commissioned or ordered by Community Development Bank, but we're waiting on the final renovation cost numbers to actually engage the appraisal and complete it. Based on the purchase price and the renovation budget, we're not anticipating any issues with the appraised value. It should be sufficient to cover all of the debt as proposed based on standard underwriting loan-to-value guidelines. That's a quick summary. I'd be happy to field any questions and
Do you want to speak at all, Lisa?
No, he's covered pretty much everything, I think. Yeah, we just feel like that we can continue to serve more people in the community if we have more space. We're struggling to even serve the families that we have with their younger siblings that are coming in. I just had a family this week that said, I have to take my toddler to a home daycare because I couldn't take them. But I've had and do have the older siblings. So it's frustrating when I can't even serve the families that I already have in my program. So space is what I need. Yeah.
So for this item, there also was a resolution, so would look for a motion on that.
Thank you, Scott, Lisa, and Dan. Any questions, comments from EDA?
Hi.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment that we hear all the time how difficult it is for our working parents to find childcare that is affordable and a good program and stuff. So it's good to see that we have a growing one that's looking to expand. So I think that's a good investment for our county and stuff. So I think that this is, as long as the value is there to cover all the three loans, it sounds like a good investment.
Thank you, Ryan. And I'll add to that. First Step and the Egan family have been in the community for a long time and provided a valuable service. I've often looked at where they're located currently and wondered how long we could possibly maintain a daycare there, especially when they need to grow it. This new location is pretty much optimal within the city itself. And as Rayanne said, you know, daycares have a ripple effect throughout the local economy that allows us to attract a lot of other things. So it's a very nice project. One thing I do struggle with a bit, and it has really nothing to do with our loan or the applicant, is being this is a city-owned asset, I really expected to see some level of participation from the city of Elk River on this when I pulled up the sources and uses, and I didn't. I struggle with that a little bit, just for future note. for those of you that don't know, the city owns this property right now. They're gonna get a check for $610,000 for the purchase price, and, you know, we're floating the gap with no participation from them, which I struggle with a little bit, but, I just wanted to make that known for the future, and if, Colleen could deliver that, back to the city, it'd be appreciated. Anybody else?
I just have a question. Do you, I know that infant care is a huge need, and you don't do infants, right? You start toddler.
I
and that-
don't have infant care at this time, and to be honest, that isn't, my intention in the immediate future. And the reason being is, again, that is a space concern and a staffing concern, which is why there is such a shortage,
Yeah.
because not only is space a premium for me and something that I'm struggling to get my hands on, but staffing is also the big problem for childcare centers. And you have to have so many staff, 1 per 4 infants. And so not only are you taking up a lot of space, but you're taking up a staff person that could serve 14 toddlers or 20 or 10, 7 toddlers or 10 preschoolers. So when you're trying to juggle everything and make everything balance out, I can serve more in the community. And, you know, financially it doesn't really matter because you charge more for an infant, but I can provide more care for, and plus there's just a whole nother set of parameters that come with the infant care. At this time, that is not my intent. However, that doesn't mean things won't, it's not like it's never gonna happen, but it's not in my immediate plans to add to that. Right now, we offer preschool as an offering that's separate from childcare. And we have a history and we have a reputation for our preschool program. And I'd like to continue that as long as I can. However, there's always continued discussion about the school district taking on preschool. And if that happens and my preschool business declines, then the plan is to move that preschool space into more childcare for infants, more toddlers, that type of thing. Which is one of the reasons I'm not looking for even a larger space, because I kind of see that coming down the pike in the future, that my business is going to shift a little bit as well. And so then we'll adapt accordingly.
Good question, Molly. Anyone else? All right, I'd be looking for a motion on the resolution presented.
I'll make the motion to approve the $50,000 revolving loan fund to Egan Properties.
We have our motion from Mr. Giroux. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jared beat you. Little technology delay. We have a second from Jared. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Danielowski.
Aye.
Vegas.
Aye.
Garrett Johnson.
Aye.
Molly Hanson.
Aye.
Andy Bowler. Ken Giroux. I vote aye as well. Resolution passes. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Scott,
all.
and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying in the county, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Been a morning here. Good to see you, still doing deal.
All right. We're gonna go ahead and move on to agenda item number 6, which is Joe Atkinson, giving an update for Greater MSP. Welcome to the big table.
Thank you. You have the arrows?
Yeah, and she's gonna set it up right now.
Okay, cool. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to meet you all. Hi, friends that are ignoring me, which is fine. Joel Akison with Greater MSP. Dan informed me that there may be a few new people with the EDA, possibly. Greater MSP is a regional economic development group for Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the region. That's the region as defined by the feds. We don't get to map out anything. The feds kind of pass down what MSAs are. This is a 15-county MSA. You'll notice there's 2 counties, St. Croix and Pierce, on the Wisconsin side. It's part of the MSA largely because of workforce. In the 10 years of Greater MSP, we have not worked a project on the Wisconsin side. We have not had governors that have gotten along in the last 10 years, and so I don't see that ever probably being a case. However, it's what the feds recognize as the MSA. To the right, you'll see predominantly the sectors of strength that we are kind of known for in this region, or what we actually try to be proactive with from a recruitment and an expansion standpoint. Hopefully those sectors are not too much of a surprise to anybody. Again, over the last 10 years, those 5 sectors are the predominant places where we've seen job growth and capital investment in this region. This is just vision, mission, and values of Greater MSP. This came alive, I'm going to say approximately 3 years ago. I'm not 100% sure. When Greater MSP started in late 2012, Michael Langley was the first CEO. For the last 2+ years, there's been a new CEO, Peter Frosch, who's my boss. And before Michael left, there was a push for vision, mission, and values. There's a lot in there, but I would go back to this slide and say there's a lot in there because 15 county regions, there's a lot in that. We're trying to be an entity that can benefit all of these counties in whatever individual projects or ambitions that any of the cities or the counties have within the region. And when I get to the end slide, I'll try to give you an example of how we're trying to do that collectively and how we're also now trying to do a little bit more specifically with cities and counties and have 2 tracks going at the same time. This is a makeup of what a lot of Greater MSP is. You'll see the private sector is 76 to 79% of Greater MSP every year. Kind of depends on the year. A lot of names you may recognize. We have historically been kind of looked at as this entity that's all about the big companies in the Fortune 500s. If you look at our projects, and that's about 200 over the last 10 years, we have a lot of projects that are small to medium-sized companies. So sometimes this is just about how an organization exists from a funding standpoint, more so than where we're actually working on projects. Notice you're in company with a lot of the other counties. I would say from the public sector standpoint, it's the counties that are driving most of the participation in economic development with Greater MSP. We have some cities, but not that many. It's predominantly always been the counties. If you look across the country, counties is where most of the economic development is driven anyway. If you look at the South in particular, those county budgets are massive when it comes to economic development. There are some philanthropies involved with us, and then we have a number of civic partners who we try to capture all the chambers, we try to capture all the CVBs, all of the other entities that are doing great things for this space also. I'd say the civic partners are truly just partners. That's not a financial situation or investment. So here's how we've kind of moved ourselves over the last few years as Peter has become CEO. I'm going to start on the right with more of the structure, and then I'll talk about the current scope on the left. You'll see in the center there that there's a board and there's staff. As a staff member, I will say we are understaffed. We need about 4 to 5 more highly competent, great people. 4 of them could be right here and we'd be great because you all have great people right here. And I'm not just saying that because they're here, but we work with the 4 of them as often as needed. Over the 10 years, there have been a lot more asks that have come our way to do this or try this or do that. And that's all great, and you'll see that it's actually starting to get bigger around us. But one of the things I'm pushing on Peter all the time about is, we're doing this with the same number of people that this started with, and something's going to break here at some point. We need to probably get ourselves to 25 to 28. That's tricky because you have to figure out also how you pay people, and so there's always that balance. But on the outside, on the bottom left, you'll see Make It MSP. That's an effort that's all about talent attraction and talent retention for the region. Came alive about 2015. Forge North was our effort to step into entrepreneurial small business space for the first time. Forge North came alive about a year or two before Launch Minnesota launched in this full state, but there's a partnership between those two. M Bold is largely driven by a lot of the big names that you saw on the second slide in the food business. So Cargill, Land O'Lakes, General Mills, Ecolab, et cetera. That is a really big focused effort that is all about food and the future of food and sustainability. The way I speak about it is, if you're familiar with the entity called Medical Alley Association, that's a specific organization in our region that is all about medical device in the medical alley world. It's possible M. Bolden someday becomes something like that, its own standalone 501c3 organization with a major focus to all about food and food security for the world. Headquartered and led out of this region, because frankly it should be, because of all of the prominent major players that we have in this space, including the University of Minnesota. Upper left, business investment. Hey, that's me. For the last 10 years, I've been a part of that team in some fashion. It really is what the very beginning of Greater MSP was, and now we've evolved to some other things. But the core business of attraction, expansion, and retention is still present and always will be. I'm very fortunate to have two really amazing directors that are with us, Kyle Jordan and Anders Victor. They run a majority of the projects in this region. And we will, at least as long as I guess I'm working for Greater MSP, we will always have a business investment unit that was focused on job growth and capital investment exclusively. Probably safe to say, if the organization chooses to not have that anymore, you'll never see me in this room talking to you again, because I will move on, because that is really what I am. I'm all about the job growth and capital investment, and so is my team. Storytelling's just coming on. We've just hired a new vice president of marketing and communications. It's been a year without that role, which has been kind of tricky for us. We have not been we've not been able to amplify what's going on in this region as much as we've wanted to over the last year, but that's going to start to change this coming Monday. Actually, she starts with us. Connects is specifically about internships and plugging in high school graduates in the region back into job opportunities in our region. There are a number of programs that exist around the region that have some type of focus on that. What Connects is just a place where all of those things come together. This is not meant to be its own program. It's meant to be a place where we can take all of the variety of programs that are happening all across the region and try to bucket them into a place so they can all feed into similar positions or companies around the region. Research and intelligence is a really, really big area for us. Probably Dan's favorite.
That's the one we utilize.
Yes, correct. That's the one Dan utilizes the most, which I do have an answer for you on your most recent ask. We all use research and intelligence quite a bit. We are very fortunate to have Amanda Taylor, who is our vice president in that bucket. She is a former site consultant, so she understands my world really well, but she's also got this natural knack to try to understand all of the other dynamics that are happening around the region. We have a number of databases. We have a number of subscriptions. There's a significant amount of the investment that Greater MSP receives that goes into that bucket. We spend money on subscriptions and databases and opportunities that collectively it makes a lot of sense to spend that money on, and it makes less sense for individuals to be spending $1 on around the whole region. So research and intelligence is a space where a lot of people like Dan and his peers across the region come into to help get direction and answers. And then RASP is air services. We had a nice run going right before COVID. We were able to secure 3 new international flights. And that is in a partnership with a lot of the large companies in our region. They have had historically a lot of demand and a lot of need to be a lot of places. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like moving forward. I think we're going to start evaluating that probably after July 4th of this year, with restrictions being dialed down and companies maybe being vaccinated as individuals become more vaccinated and they want to start to have more face-to-face interaction and meetings like they used to. RASP is likely going to come back somewhat heavy the end of this year, beginning of 2022, because we want to make sure that we bring back all our flights as fast as we possibly can to make sure that we're matching up with all of the business needs. International is going to be tricky, I think, for a while, but we're already being told that expect international passports that prove out vaccination and healthiness. So there's a lot, I think, coming in that space. In the interim, real quick, I'll end, is we've with the MAC, we've initiated an air cargo study, which is different than air passenger. Well, air passenger really kind of went on hiatus and we were slow there over the last year. The MAC still has a couple strategic pieces of land around their airport that there has been a lot of ask and demand and pressure for air cargo capabilities. So in partnership with the MAC, we're going to try to figure out this year, how do we maximize the last pieces of land in that airport to make sure that air cargo is dealt with to the max ability for this region. Don't expect Memphis. That's not where that's going. But there are some strategic items in this region that could benefit from some increased direct air cargo traffic, and that's what we're after. On the left is our current scope. That's a lot of the work that we're trying to do that fits into one of the buckets on the right that I just talked about. There's a lot there. I still advocate for 4 to 5 to 8 more people to help us do it. And so this is the ending slide. You'll notice in the bottom right that's empty, and that's by design, and Dan and I have talked about that. But in the upper left, there always remains the jobs and economic growth focus. We are extremely busy right now. In January and February, we have seen the most inbound project opportunities into this region since 2016. It has been, there's been, I hate to say this because COVID has been a super challenge for everybody in a lot of different ways. The one thing it did do, though, is it got our unemployment number back up to some degree. And historically, whenever this region shows an unemployment number that's up a little bit, job growth and capital investment deals are extremely busy. Because a lot of people want to be here because they know the workforce is so great. What's tough for us is when we're down so low and basically everybody has a job. That's when it starts to really slow down and stall in my world. And that's what was happening in 18 and 19 and the beginning of 20 until all of a sudden it changed on us. So I expect us to be fairly busy for the remainder of 21 and most of 22. And then after that, if we have taken that unemployment number back down low again, I expect it's going to slow down some. That's just historically what has always happened in this region. People are our big focus. They always have been. They always will be. We're known for that. Even when people want to bellyache, particularly out-of-market people trying to evaluate us, they want to bellyache about our cost structure, our taxes, or what have you. But they know they have the workforce here that's going to make their businesses be successful. And in small business, we are getting a lot of requests, particularly from the counties, some of Dan's colleagues around the region. Step into the space and try to help launch more of a regional comprehensive effort for regional small businesses. It's not easy, but we are starting to go into that space this year. And one of the ways we're doing it is to try to understand through data some supply chain analysis. One of the things our research and intelligence team did during COVID is applied for about a $500,000 EDA grant that we were successful in receiving. And that whole grant is supposed to do an analysis of this region to figure out how can we maximize our supply chain and for our big companies to start using even more of our small and medium size that we have in market already to try to link that to see job growth that way. And the bottom right is open for the likes of Dan and I to figure out what to put in there together, for you all to share with me what you'd like to see us work on together, or tell Dan and Dan gets back to me. I mean, I just keep focusing back on Dan, but Dan has been a pretty long-standing point of contact for myself and the organization for years. most everything that we do together, it's always with Dan in some fashion. And so what we're trying to do is, everything I've said up until this point is, hey, everybody, look what Greater MSP is doing. I know, and sometimes I don't like being just telling all the time, but when you look back at that 15 counties, everything I've said to date is supposed to be trying to do things that's a max benefit for everybody in that region. But the bottom right-hand box is really meant, okay, Dan, on an annual basis in 2021, what are we gonna specifically do together that Greater MSP can do to support the specific efforts that Sherburne County or any of the communities are looking to do? And with that, that's the high-level overview of Greater MSP.
Thanks, Joel.
You bet.
Any questions for Joel, comments? Anything to add, Dan?
Yeah, we do have several partners that we work with. Greater MSP is one, Greater St. Cloud Development Corp, Initiative Foundation. So it's my goal to bring them at least one in each meeting to give you an update of what they're working on and for you guys to provide feedback of what you'd like to see them help us with. I know an example of when Joel was a great help is Northern Metal moved from Minneapolis to Becker. Wanted to know what the job markets were like around here. What are the wages? They were able to do the research for us and they actually used that in their recruiting efforts. So it's things like that. Anytime a site selector calls and we need some data, Joel's the first person I call. And it's always within a half hour that I get a response. No matter what meeting he's in, he'll text me and say, give me a few minutes, I'll get back to you. So it wasn't always that relationship, but over the last 3-4 years, it's been fantastic that if we need something, they're there to help us out. But I really want to get your feedback on what they could do to help the region too, because they do work with each of the cities very closely as well.
Yeah, and I can say from a county board perspective in our investment in Greater MSP, you know, every year we look at it and then we look at the name of the organization and it's a struggle, but it truly is, you know, especially Dan said the last few years, as that relationship's gotten better, it's an opportunity for us to punch above our weight class and especially to access all those tools that otherwise we wouldn't be investing in as a county of our size and have access to those. So we see a tremendous value there. And I don't want to put anybody on the EDA on the spot, but this is kind of what we're asking now is kind of why we redid the EDA and specifically sought out people from different industries like all of you. Is this is the time where we lean on you and your experience and your day-to-day jobs and links to the community to give us feedback and give Greater MSP feedback, Dan feedback as far as what you're seeing that we're missing or could be doing a little bit better, or what we're doing great and we need to pour more resources behind. So don't feel like you necessarily have to give us that feedback today, but give it some thought and reach out to Dan, because that's why we made this major overhaul in the EDA this last year, was to be able to tap into that stuff in the community. So. Rayanne, are you still on? Anything to add?
No, nothing other than I'm glad to see that I know there was a concern back when Greater MSP was first formed and coming on board to be a member of it. There was always a concern. Okay, Greater MSP, Greater Minneapolis St. Paul, and would we get value in competing against the metro? So I'm happy to see that concern has subsided because there has been more involvement by Greater MSP out in the surrounding counties of the metro. So I do appreciate that, Joel, and hearing that and seeing that. So I think there's a lot of great things to come. We're a great county. We have lots of growth opportunity and lots of available land. So thank you.
Commissioner, I lobbied for it to be called Greater Joel at the very beginning, but they for whatever reason, they said no. So I understand your, sorry, I'm kidding. Good to see you, Commissioner.
Yes, good to see you too, Joel. Thank you. I'll be happy to get back to somewhat of whatever normal.
Yeah, me
normal's
too.
gonna be.
Any other additions, questions? All right, we'll go ahead and wrap. Thanks, Joel. Appreciate your time and appreciate you coming out.
Thanks.
All right, now we will be moving on to agenda item number 7, which is Dan giving us the 2021 COVID-19 business relief update.
Yeah, and I included it in your packet, so I'm not gonna go over it. It breaks it down into each individual grant and which communities were funded. I also wanted to highlight that it sounds like we're gonna be getting additional funds from another federal stimulus. The city's also gonna be getting money, much like last time. The difference is we have 3.5 years to spend it this time instead of about 4 months. So hopefully we'll be able to put together a pretty good plan. I expect to have a lot more information for you guys by next meeting because the guidelines aren't out yet. We just got some of the big picture parameters, but by next month I should have a lot more details for this group.
Thank you. And again, just to go back to the point that I just made on the last agenda item, when this American Recovery Act funds come in, that's again where you guys can give a lot of input and help us. At the county level, we sometimes lose touch on an industry by industry basis, so it's good to have you guys be able to give us feedback as far as what's needed out there.
And last time was such a time crunch, we just had to throw something together. This time we can be a little more.
Yeah, we can be very deliberate and leverage these dollars as much as we can. So it's a great opportunity.
And I just wanted to say thanks to Dan, because I know how much work that is and all those businesses that, you were able to help in applications, and I know how much work and follow-up and stuff you have to do, so thank you.
Dan's mental health bill was also included in CARES Act.
He needs a trip down to see the Twins in spring practice.
Yeah, it was a heavy lift for Dan, so we all appreciate the work he did.
Yes,
all right,
we do.
Next meeting is April 15th, right back here. Appreciate everybody this morning, and if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn.